Mission Log Supplemental, number 17. The one with a little bit of everything.
From high atop Mount Selea, welcome to another edition of Mission Log, a supplemental edition. I'm John Champion.
And I'm Ken Ray. Each week, we take apart an episode of Star Trek or a movie from Star Trek, trying to suss out the messages, morals, and meanings, and figuring out whether they stand the test of time. That is not what we are doing here, however. In the supplementals, we do supplemental things. We take questions from listeners. We play little bits of interviews. Sometimes we play big bits of interviews and don't take listeners' questions, but, you know, it's different things at different times.
I think what you're saying, Ken, is we just get to do whatever we want to do.
Well, we do.
Yeah.
And we've honestly had a lot of time here.
Yes.
Yeah, because we're a little bit ahead of, the people listening. Mm-hmm. And so we've been on Vulcan for, it feels like, years now.
Right.
Hanging out at the Mount Selea gift shop.
Mm-hmm. They have great robes, but remember, if you take a robe from your room, they will add it to your bill.
That's true.
Yeah.
I got the Vulcans Do It Logically bumper sticker.
Oh, yeah.
I'm very excited
you got the last one.
Yeah, I'm going to put that on a friend's car. It'll be totally
good.
Awesome.
I got the Vulcan on board, the little thing you stick to the window. Yeah.
And the Mount Selea shot glass. That's always good, too. All right. So anyway, we got some stuff to take care of today. We are gonna take some of your questions. We actually have a bonus part of an interview that we've played before, but we haven't played this part of the interview before. Ties into our recent dealings with Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. Bunch of fun stuff coming up, and then we've got some fun business to take care of too. So I didn't want to make it sound like this is not a fun part, because from the moment we start till the moment we're done, 24/7 fun, except awesome. It's not 24/7, but you get the idea. We're going to be in Las Vegas in a few weeks. The 2014 Star Trek Las Vegas convention from Creation. That runs July 31st, 2014 through August 3rd, 2016. So it's a big...
It's a huge convention.
It's a long convention. The hotel bill is going to be atrocious. July 21st, 2014 through August 3rd, 2014, of course. We're going to have a panel there with Roddenberry. Rod, of course, son of Gene Roddenberry and executive producer and creator of this show. We're going to be raising some of the topics that we have explored on Mission Log over the last couple of years. Actually, wow, it's going to be just short of 2 years by the time the convention ends, which is kind of nutty. But if you've enjoyed hearing us talk about this stuff, then come to the panel and watch us talk about it too. Because what could be more fun than that? And then you're also going to be on some other panel, right?
I was invited by TrekMovie.com, which incidentally is carrying Mission Log right now as well, to join their panel about the captains. So it's kind of an interesting format. We've done sort of the battle of the captains before. This is sort of like defending your captains. We've got all five. You got Kirk, Picard, Sisko, Janeway, Archer, and then people representing those characters, almost as like a courtroom sort of setting, where we're going to talk about their strengths and weaknesses, and then try to get a winner.
I got to tell you, I was actually asked by James Kerwin.
Okay.
To represent Archer initially. And I thought about writing back to him just a stream of invective because, I don't know Archer that well. And seriously, it was obvious. And I mean nobody any offense. I know somebody's going to defend Archer and they're going to do it beautifully. And there are going to be people out there who say that Archer is their captain. But it seemed obvious to me that there was one captain left. And they had to find somebody. And I have not watched a lot of Enterprise. I've watched a bit of Enterprise, but really it would have meant watching 5 seasons of Enterprise over like 6 months.
You only got 4. Only 4.
Oh, only 4?
Seasons.
Okay.
Yeah.
4 seasons of Enterprise over 6 months while we were watching the rest of the original series, then the animated series, then the movies.
Yeah.
So I didn't do it.
It would have been very hard.
Now I will tell you, I wish I had, I think Rod actually had joked, and this is a really funny idea, and I wish I had done it. I should have put myself in to defend the animated Captain Kirk.
Right. Yeah.
Well, and I'll go ahead and make my case now, since I'm not going to be on stage to do it.
Okay, go ahead.
It took original series Kirk 48 minutes to solve problems. Mm-hmm. How long did it take animated series Kirk?
22 minutes.
There you go. Every time.
Yep.
Every time. Hey, not as much wasting time, not as much sexism from that Kirk. I mean, really, he's just kind of like he's essence of Kirk. He is distilled Kirk. He's go in, get the job done, get out.
I like that.
I think that I might have been able to defend him for easily. Well, I'd be good for like 22 minutes of the debate anyway.
Right. Well, let me tell you who else is on the panel. Kipley Brown from Star Trek Enterprise will be defending Picard. James Kerwin, our friend James Kerwin, will be defending Sisko. Kayla will be defending Janeway, and Joe Dickerson will be defending Archer. I have to say that, it doesn't matter what I spoil on the supplemental, because we're trying to let that get into the main mission log episodes. I am an Enterprise fan, and I think that Archer is a really relatable captain. Okay. Now, like you, I would have had to have gone back and rewatched it, because I'm pretty removed from that show now, having done our course of work here on mission log. But I think he's a really relatable guy. Mm-hmm. Whether or not that makes him the best captain, well, we'll have to see what Joe comes up with.
Yeah. But, yeah. And best of luck to him. I have to say really quickly, Kayla Yakovina, not Kayla LaFrance.
No.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Kayla Yakovina, who is an editor for TrekMovie.com.
Right. And also a volcanologist, but not that kind. Okay.
No. Oh, we have to call her Doctor now. We have to call her Dr. Yakovino.
I don't have to call her Doctor.
Okay. She's just Kayla to you.
So she's a doctor now.
She is.
Yeah, it's going to be impossible to talk to now. Just impossible to talk to.
Okay. Let me tell our listeners a little more fun news. We have giveaways. We have awesome giveaways coming up. Through the website, through Facebook, all of that good stuff, we will be giving away 3 copies of Star Trek The Next Generation Season 1 on Blu-ray. Check out our Facebook page on our homepage for the details. If you're going to be at the convention in Vegas, we will also be giving away a bonus 4th copy of Next Gen Season 1 on Blu-ray, as well as a transporter from our friends and sponsors, filetransporterstore.com. For those of you who will be at the convention, you will have to be at our panel, which is Friday afternoon, August 1st, 2014.
That's for people. That's for people listening in the future.
Yes, right.
Yeah. If people, because somebody picking up the show for the first time in, let's say, 2017. Yeah, we're not necessarily going to be there August 1st.
No.
But if you're listening now, and by the way, if you're listening in 2017, it is so too bad that you missed it, because our panel was awesome. Mm-hmm. It was the panel. I really wasn't sure that, John should do the panel topless, but he said he was going to be able to deliver, and amazingly, I mean, really, well, it's all over YouTube in 2017, so just go and
check that out.
Check it out.
That part is a lie.
You don't know?
Yeah, I won't know. That's very true.
that could easily be happening. Well, easily.
That easily. Yeah.
But it could be happening.
Right. But the thing that is true is we are giving away great stuff. So go to our website, and then if you are at the convention in Vegas, come to our table. You can sign up for all of that, and then we will be giving it away on stage. And we will announce those winners in the recording that'll then become the next supplemental episode of Mission Log.
Now, you keep burying parts that people need to know, like, Kayla, which Kayla, come to our table. By the way, we're going to have a table.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're going to have a mission log table, and you're not going to be able to miss it, because it's going to be directly across from the Roddenberry table.
The Roddenberry Island that they have in the vendor's room, yeah.
So when you back up to take a picture of the Roddenberry Island and you bump into another table, hey, that's us.
That is us.
So turn around and say hey, and no, you cannot come back behind to get a better picture of the Roddenberry Island. Mm-mm. Unless you want to talk to us, in which case, whatever.
Yeah, sure. All right, Ken. Well, I think it's time to move along to topics. We have, we get a lot of feedback from our listeners at Mission Log, and they email us, they Skype us, they hit us up on Twitter, and I want to kind of share what our listeners have been talking about. First of all, a huge thanks for all the kind words about our coverage of the motion picture. Honestly, Ken, I didn't know how it would be received. And it seems like a lot of people sat out when we did the animated series. Mm-hmm. Shame on you, because it's a good show, and I think our discussions were a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. But thank you so much for the huge response on the movies so far. As of this recording, we have released the motion picture and The Wrath of Khan. And I just have to share a comment we got from Brian in Los Angeles, who said, "Congratulations, you did the impossible. You made Star Trek the motion picture interesting." I don't think it was purely us who made Star Trek the motion picture interesting. I think it's an interesting movie, and we just sort of shared our enthusiasm for it.
Yeah, I don't think he's actually complimenting us as much as he's bashing the motion picture.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
And I got to say, even though we don't have an email right in front of us, there were a lot of people who said the same thing as we completed the animated series.
Yeah.
Even people who said, I still don't like the animated series, which we had a few. We had a few people say they still don't enjoy the animated series, but they now appreciate it a bit more. They feel like there actually was more Star Trek there than they realized, which I think was a realization that you and I came to as well.
Oh, yeah.
As we were going through it. Yeah, if you sat out the animated series, you missed a lot of really fun production too. There's a whole there's a whole world of commercials and John Champion toy trivia.
Right.
Star Trek toys, by the way. I'm not,
You don't have the John Champion toys? I'm a little disappointed, Ken.
Yeah, no, I don't. I don't have the John Champion action figure, but
Right. Well, figures are sold separately. Okay. The response to the movies has been cool because they are a big undertaking for us. Obviously, it's more to watch and it's more kind of to chew on. But I think the Mission Log format still works in discussing the movies. And I'm happy that people listening to it have been happy.
It's really interesting. You say it's more to chew on. I personally think the movies are kind of less to chew on. The movies are trying to be, start to finish. Somebody's never seen this before. Let them walk in. Let them be hit with something. Let them walk out, and they never have to come back to Star Trek again. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And we're doing the TV shows. First of all, they get to play more with sort of. They get to play with the mind a bit more than movies will try to do, generally speaking, especially movies today. But I mean, even movies, from the mid '80s on, I think.
Right.
In some ways, it feels like there's less to chew on, but there's certainly more screen time. So, that's a weird kind of. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I'm not just arguing with you. I'm arguing with you. I'm more thinking about what you said.
Well, I think there's more detail in the movies. Clearly, there's a lot of detail and a lot of moments to be parsed to figure out if they fit into our mission, which is discussing ethics, morals, meanings, messages. But I do agree with you and Judy and Gar, when we had the Reeve Stevens on the show, and they kind of made their case for why Star Trek belongs on TV. Yeah. They're essentially saying what you're saying, which is when you have the luxury of TV and long production time, you can then dig deep into a character or a topic. In a movie, you have to lean toward spectacle in some ways. It doesn't mean you can't have something deep as well, but you might give up a little bit of that long-form character study just because of the constraints of making a movie. Mm-hmm. So I get that. A couple of the topics that I think really rose to the top when people were writing to us over the last, say, 4 weeks or so. Two main things. The first being, in our interview with Curtis Armstrong, go back and listen to that in the previous supplemental. I'm sorry, actually before Judy and Gar, Curtis Armstrong and Kayla LaFrance. Some of our listeners detected that what he was saying was kind of a patronizing take on fandom. And it was sort of a perception that he basically said it, indicating that things that aren't TOS, aren't the original series, aren't Star Trek. And put that in quotes. They aren't real Star Trek. First of all, stick around to the end of today's show because we have a little more from Curtis talking specifically about his time with Nicholas Meyer.
He also openly insults anybody who likes anything besides the original series.
Right.
And that's not true. That's not true. Please don't send Curtis is booger on Twitter hate mail.
No.
Or hate tweets.
Right. But I thought it was interesting, and I thought it was worth replying to because I think there's kind of a fine line between what he was saying, maybe the intent of what he was saying, and then how I would address that. My idea is that, okay, from a personal level, he says that he grew up with the original series. That was all that he knew, and he kind of set that in the context of when he was watching it. He was, a kid, like a teenager, and he was able to watch it on his friend's color TV, and it was just awesome. And then he was hooked, and he went to conventions. And then for a long time after that, he just wasn't exposed to Star Trek. He just wasn't watching it. Mm-hmm. So when Kayla on King of the Nerds says, oh, you got to watch Voyager. Voyager's awesome. He's sort of like, what is this Voyager? I know nothing about that. I know the original series. That's my Star Trek. And to him, that is Star Trek. I think if you step back and you look at it from a big perspective of what is fandom and what is Star Trek as a whole, I get where fans can be rankled by that, and I agree with them to the extent that, I never want to tell somebody what they should be a fan of. If you are a Star Trek fan because all you know is Into Darkness, awesome, you're a Star Trek fan. If all you know is the original series, awesome, you're a Star Trek fan. If all you know is the animated series, cool, you're a member of the club. There's not a litmus test for what makes you a fan or not. It's just, if you're into it, you're into it. And I don't think we can discount somebody who likes one series over another. I'm reminded, Ken, of friends that I have, and I may have even mentioned this on our show, friends who are hardcore James Bond fans. Mm-hmm. And then they kind of test other James Bond fans like, well, I'm a Sean Connery fan. Who's your favorite Bond? And if you dare to say anybody other than Sean Connery, then it's like you're immediately out of the discussion. Like, you like Roger Moore? Oh, no. Hey, he's not James Bond.
We don't even say Lazenby's name.
No, you just don't even say it, And it's just kind of a nasty kind of one-upmanship. My fandom is better than your fandom kind of thing, and I don't want to see that. I don't, So I get it where listeners might have been rankled by what he said, but I don't think the intent was to specifically diminish other fans. I think the intent was to say, hey, to me, Star Trek is this, because this is the Star Trek that I know.
He's actually in a very interesting place right now, and I'm kind of there. I mean, I joked earlier about, Enterprise sort of being the leftover Star Trek. I've only watched, I want to say, maybe the first season of Enterprise, because it happened to be on in a time where, I think for like a year and a half, I didn't even have a cable, so it was not really terribly accessible to me. Mm-hmm. I'm going to get to rediscover a whole lot of stuff that I've seen once. And then there's a lot of stuff that I haven't even seen at all.
Yeah.
He is in sort of an enviable position right now of having watched the original series and then not having watched anything else.
Right.
He's got so much neat stuff to discover.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's kind of coming from a place of... he's basically at the start of this whole other universe that he had completely discounted until somebody came to him and said, hey, come on, try this and see what you think. Mm-hmm. That said, we have gotten emails from people who have said, I never really had any use for the original series.
Right.
Until I started listening to your show. And that's not us. That's Star Trek, obviously. Yeah. But you will find... you and I have a friend. You and I have a friend who Enterprise is her Star Trek.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. And how we both have this friend is she goes to the conventions. So she is a Star Trek fan, and she's hip to all of it. But Enterprise is hers. For me, it's Next Generation, and for Curtis, it's it's Sherlock Holmes.
Right, his Star Trek is Sherlock Holmes. Yeah,
which is kind of true. By the way, to that, You had a thing you wanted to correct about the our coverage of Wrath of Khan.
Yeah. I said in the Wrath of Khan episode that Nicholas Meyer directed the 7% solution. He did not. One of our listeners, Rob, from right here in beautiful Los Angeles, points out that Meyer wrote the book and screenplay. Herbert Ross directed the movie. And I think what I was doing, I was conflating that with one of my other favorite Nicholas Meyer movies, Time After Time, which he wrote and directed. And I love that movie. It is so good.
I'm especially a fan of the part about he takes off his glasses and puts the arm of them in his mouth. Free love.
Yeah, hey, man, the more you study about H.G. Wells, he was an interesting guy. He was a very interesting guy.
Oh, and that was, it's Malcolm McDowell not being scary. I'm sorry, Roddy McDowell, excuse me. It's Malcolm McDowell.
It's Malcolm
McDowell, right.
Yeah.
Not Planet of the Apes guy. Okay. No. Clockwork Orange guy.
Yeah.
It's Clockwork Orange guy not being terribly scary. It is David Warner, who sort of becomes a bit player in some of the Star Trek movies. But he also, of course, was evil in Time Bandits.
Yeah.
And Mary Steenburgen is weird because she really just never, ever, ever stops being lovely.
Yeah.
But she's really lovely in this movie.
She is.
Yeah.
She's wonderful in it.
Yeah, it's a fantastic movie.
But did we put the Curtis Armstrong thing to rest about the fandom? I just, I come away from that and I get why people be upset because I don't like fan hate. I really do feel like Star Trek is a very big tent that should welcome anybody and everybody. The cost of admission is that you say, I like Star Trek as well. And that's it. Okay.
Yeah.
You remember, whether you're the person who saves all year long to go to your favorite convention or you're the person who happens to catch an episode on Netflix. Cool. If you enjoy it, you enjoy it. And I kind of get tired by the arguments about this is Star Trek, this is not Star Trek. You and I have the luxury of getting to argue in hopefully a very civilized way about the thought behind Star Trek. But it would not behoove either of us to trash each other about, you like this series? That's horrible. You and I go around all the time about Into Darkness, but even then, I think we both respect the idea that our opinions are about content, not about like, oh, if you like this movie, then you're an idiot. That's not an argument I want to have.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I can't imagine that we're not going to come across this again.
Oh,
I
no.
mean, if we talk to anybody who is a celebrity, but who is not tied directly to Star Trek, then there is a very good chance that we're gonna have this again. That somebody's going to say, "Oh no, well you'll never, nothing is the original series, or nothing is Next Generation, or nothing is Voyager." And it's true, nothing is any of those things except that they are all Star Trek. So yeah, I say. When you say, do we put it to rest, I say we at the very least let it take a nap, because it's quite possible that it's going to want to come out and play again later. And then we'll, correct it again and send it back to bed.
Right.
Yeah. There's another thing, and I didn't really realize this was a thing until I was at the convention last year. And this is something that has come up from listeners. Is the animated series canon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boy. Yeah, that I would say as soon as we wrap the animated series, everybody on Facebook, Twitter, emails directly to us, they want us to talk more about the animated series and just sort of like wrap it up and decide where it belongs on the shelf next to Star Trek. And do you want to answer that first, or do you want me to answer that first?
Well, I mean, I don't know how to answer it, honestly. I mean, certainly it creates a lot of loose ends that never get addressed again. Like, there's a 50-foot Spock out there someplace.
Right.
Okay,
right.
Yeah, and it's a whole different Spock. It's a completely different 50-foot Spock just hanging,
Yeah.
I would have to say the idea of canon was stupid when Star Trek the Animated Series was made, right? It was just like, oh, look, we get to make some more Star Trek. Awesome. There was not this,
Right.
well, how is this going to fit into a 50-year continuum or a 50-plus year continuum? I mean, it was, hey, let's make some cartoons. Okay, great. And, there'll be adult stories with adult themes, not like, wow, 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 but
Right.
there'll be adult stories with adult themes. But, but we're going to get to make some more Star Trek. And I don't think there's a lot of worry about, well, what about this 50-foot Spock now? Where is he? And why have we never seen another Felosian except for in the Pocket universe? If you have to make it work, then yes, it has to be canon because it was written by some of the same writers. It is using the same characters. It has to be, despite the fact that Gene Roddenberry might not have wanted it to be. It is. So, you got a deal, I guess. I don't know. I think honestly, a better question would be, is JJ Trek canon? Mm-hmm. And I don't know how to answer that question, but we've got a long time before we have to. So
yeah. Check back with us in 12 years and we'll let you know.
Indeed.
I think a better question for animated series is it Star Trek? And I think unequivocally, yes, it is Star Trek.
No,
it is.
You should go into politics. Right. Sir, what do you think about this? Well, the real question isn't that. The real question is this.
Right.
Excuse me. The question is the animated series canon? Because I think I think you and I both agree. Yes, the animated series is Star Trek.
Yeah.
It's more Star Trek than a lot of episodes of Star Trek. I don't think there is an episode of the animated series that I wouldn't rather watch than Cat's Paw.
Oh, hell yes.
Well, seriously. Cat's Paw was so, practically not an episode of Star Trek except that it had, members of the crew. Mm-hmm. And everyone, or almost everyone, I think, of the animated series was more Star Trek than Cat's Paw, as an example. So thank you very much, Senator, but I redirect the question to you.
Okay, well, let me approach canon this way. let me approach canon this way.
All right.
There's a lot of controversy about Star Trek, the animated series, having been canonized, decanonized, and who did it, and under what motivation did they do it. And you can go on the Google and try to figure that out for yourself. What it comes down to is this, and I think Dorothy Fontana, if I can kind of summarize what she said about it, when they were working on this show, they were working under the premise that this is Star Trek. It is a continuation of the original series. Mm-hmm. So no question about it. That's how they approached it. That's why they got the same writers. That's why they went after the same cast. That's why Gene Roddenberry was a consultant on it. And all of those pieces were in place to make that part of canon. Now, fast forward, and suddenly Star Trek is back as movies, which nobody ever expected. They had the potential of it being Star Trek Phase 2, which nobody was thinking about at the time they did the animated series. And then you've got Next Gen, which nobody would have ever imagined, except for maybe Gene Roddenberry, when they were making the animated series. So canon then doesn't become a question for fans. Canon simply becomes a tool for writers to work with. Mm-hmm. And that tool then, it basically raises a question of what elements from previously existing Star Trek are we allowed to write about or not allowed to write about? And there are things that happen in the animated series, like 50-foot Spock, that clearly you just have to draw a line of demarcation to say, no, you cannot write about 50-foot Spock.
Oh, because somebody needs to write about 50-foot Spock. Do you think we're seeing? I know he's already directing and everything, but do you think he's decided on a script for the third reboot?
We could get him on the phone.
We need 50-foot Spock
in
the next one, but it should be played by Leonard Nimoy.
Yeah. Oh, clearly. But then
80-year-old 50-foot Spock. But then that's a movie I'd pay twice for.
So you fast forward several years later and you get to Enterprise, and they sort of relax this idea of canon where you go, oh, well, wait, well, we can have the Vulcan history of the Forge, and we can reference things very specifically that were in the animated series. So I have to look at the animated series as canon-ish. It was written with the intent of being Star Trek. It was written with the intent of being part of that original 5-year mission. And if we want to get really, really nitpicky, then we have to look at all the things that are in the original series or in the movies that are simply inconsistent and decide what stays and what goes. Ultimately, it comes down to what makes the best story.
Yeah.
If you try to build internal consistency for every little thing that happens, you will go nuts. You will absolutely go crazy. Especially
because that's not the way it was set up. I mean, I think you do get with Next Gen, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, you get a bit more of that. Because you're 20 years in at that point. And so you have people going, maybe we should actually think about how this is going to work with everything else.
Right.
Having started, though, thinking, it was, what did they say? Wagon train in space. Well, right. Westerns, series anyway, or serials were famous for time to mosey. that's pretty much how you dealt with That's how you dealt with a character, right? Well, I'm sure everything's going to be fine here. Got to go. So, don't just retcon it, okay?
Yeah.
Just retcon it. They shrank the 50-foot Vulcan back down to size. Right. And of course it was actually Abraham Lincoln and Kublai Khan, or Genghis Khan, not Kublai. Kublai was busy that week. Genghis Khan. Yeah. So, don't worry about it.
Yeah, that'll be the next Mission Log t-shirt. Just retcon it.
Just retcon it. Yeah. Look for that at the table in August 2017.
Right. All right, we got an email from Mission Log listener Eric, who says, regarding our discussion of the Wrath of Khan, you have Khan, who is genetically engineered to be tougher, stronger, and smarter than normal people, and yet Kirk, a normal person, has no trouble outsmarting him. He utterly fails to learn the lesson of Moby Dick, a book he clearly admires, or at least was the only book he had available to read for at least 15 years, which is, before embarking on a mission of vengeance, dig 2 graves. Khan is such an idiot, it's difficult to see how he rose to power in the 1990s.
I don't know. He took over the Enterprise in less than 40 minutes.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I wouldn't say that Khan is an idiot. I just think that Khan is maybe just more deluded about the things that he is doing. He is so single-minded. Let me put it this way. Have you heard these scientific studies, neurological studies, about people who show signs of antisocial behavior? And on the far extreme, you have people who are serial killers. They have no empathy. They have no remorse. So they can do that and think that it's okay. All right. But then somewhere along that spectrum, you also have people who are doctors, who are research scientists, who can turn on that part of the brain that allows them a little bit of detachment, so that then everything doesn't become overwhelmed with empathy, and it allows them to do their jobs. So it's a little bit of that focus that allows them to do something that maybe somebody else could not do. And maybe something about Khan is that you're sort of overamping everything that he can do. And like the great stories of Star Trek, if we don't temper that with compassion, then we let our creation run wild, and then we really have a problem. So Khan is very strong, but he also has this streak of antisocial, psychotic behavior, tempered with this idea of total focus, total dedication to his mission, that some of the details then fall by the wayside. So even when people are telling him, no, don't do this, you have already won, he's like, no, I'm going to do this. Yeah.
He's just become obsessed at this point. That's really what it comes down to, it seems to me. I don't think we can talk about whether he's smart or not. Granted, what we're given to know that he is smart is the fact that he keeps telling us. And, right. And if you know the history that's presented in the original series, then he was one of the, I think, 12 warlords that basically took over the planet until he got ousted. So, it's really just a story of obsession. When you say he didn't learn anything from Moby Dick, well, he's living it. Yeah. That's really what it comes down to, it seems to me. I have to address one other thing about Khan. We said, actually, in our wrap-up of The Wrath of Khan, I don't understand why Kirk thinks that he's going to beat Khan, because Khan would just, tear him in half in front of his son, right? And a couple of people wrote to us and said, it's the decisions so far are 1-0 Kirk.
Right.
As far as the fights.
Okay.
Here's the thing. Kirk is older, and while Khan looks older, he's still a genetically enhanced individual. I don't think. Now somebody did point out that Kirk did have weapons down in the Genesis vestibule.
Yeah.
So maybe his thinking was, Khan, you're going to have to come down here. And the second he materializes, shoot him.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But that hardly seems like a Kirk maneuver.
No, I know. That's actually, he would wait for him to get there. He would show him he has the phaser. He would then toss the phaser aside and put up his dukes. And then
he would get his ass kicked.
Khan would rip off his arms and beat David with his own father's arms.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That's a good movie. That's in the director's cut.
Yeah. Right.
Well, the director's cut, the one that plays in my mind. Seriously, there's a matinee later. Stop by.
Greetings and salutations, Mission Log. This is John Arminio at Quasar Sniffer on Twitter. I have a comment about the episode Sharper Than a Serpent's Tooth. Now, both of you gentlemen talked very wonderfully about how past episodes of Star Trek and other movies like Prometheus have touched on the subject of, ancient aliens coming to Earth and being perceived as gods. And I think there's also a lot of specific parallels with this episode and Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull, with all the Mesoamerican details and those gods kind of inspiring architecture all over the world with similar features and all that kind of stuff. So I'm wondering if this is just kind of a trope, not any fault of the writer of this specific episode, but that we should just be done with in science fiction. We should just be like, okay, this is done. We've explored this possibility, but let's put it to bed, at least for now. The same way, like, in fantasy, the damsel in distress trope is kind of tired. There's other things that we could write about. So maybe this is just an example of one of those, and we can move on. And fortunately for us, Star Trek did move on and did do many, many other creative things. So thank you, and I look forward to the next journey with both of you fellows. Live long and prosper.
All right, thank you, John, regarding How Sharper Than a Serpent's Tooth, and kind of paralleling that with the episodes that we talked about, like Who Mourns for Adonais, and then we kind of got off on that tangent about Prometheus, and as John brought up, Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull. So yeah, this idea of super advanced alien races coming to Earth a long time ago and then messing with things. And sometimes we end up worshiping them as gods. And he says, is this a trope that we should put to bed for now?
I mean, it's something that keeps coming up. And we talked about Prometheus. Prometheus was, I guess, as we record this, it was only 2 years ago.
Well, I think he's asking, is it overplayed? I mean, I think what I said when we did How Sharper Than a Serpent's Tooth was, if we go by Star Trek history, the universe is just littered with these advanced races who have a god complex, who just feel like it's okay to show up and mess around with things. We should be able to look at our entire human history and go, oh, yeah, another alien. Oh, look, another alien for that race. Oh, another one showed up there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the idea of putting it to bed, that just being kind of done with that idea, at least in terms of Star Trek, I'm okay with that. I think we had some good episodes that dealt with the idea. Will we see that kind of theme show up again in Star Trek? Well, we'll see versions of it.
Yes.
We'll see aliens visiting and messing with Earth, not necessarily wanting to be worshipped.
I would love somebody to write a story where a bunch of aliens screw with one race. That would actually be kind of fun.
They keep coming back and fighting over it.
Well, when you bring this up, what I'm reminded of is what's 6 times 9?
54.
No, 6 times 9 is 42. See, it was Life, the Universe, and Everything, I think, right? Or maybe it was The Restaurant at the End of the Universe. I can't remember which. Benji Mouse and the other one commission the building of the planet Earth to run this matrix. right? And figure out the question to the ultimate answer of life's universe and everything. Well, we know that the answer is 42. And so they're running this billion years program to find out what the question is. But the problem is the Gulga Frenchum crash landed on the planet and ended up supplanting the carbon-based life forms that were meant to run the equation, that being Cro-Magnon man, with themselves. And so they introduce a variable. And according to Mr. Ugg, who is drawing tiles from a Scrabble bag and spitting out the answer just mechanically, or spitting out the question rather to the ultimate answer, what is 6 times 9 is the question, and the answer is 42. Something got gummed up.
Got it.
And that would actually be a great thing to see, just like a whole bunch of godlike characters going, nah, give him another arm. Or does the head have to be quite so symmetrical? It'd be great. Like every 5,000 years, somebody comes and just monkeys with the monkeys, and you end up with some sort of. That would be actually a very fun. Get Bob Orsi on the phone again. Be a very different kind of movie, though, and the wackiest episode of Star Trek ever, or the wackiest Star Trek movie ever.
Right.
Even more so than Galaxy Quest.
Mm-hmm. To John's question, I'm done with the godlike aliens in need of worship.
I say more of them.
You say more of it.
Absolutely,
okay.
Lots of them though. I want yes, I want like a whole stage of gods going. Well, okay, you can thank him for that extra arm if you want to, but seriously, that head leaning to the left thing, totally me.
What's our next email, Ken?
Who is this from? I'm sorry, I don't see a name. It's from Dan.
From Dan. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. After listening to your TMP podcast, I like how you guys mentioned Spock's persona sort of locking into place in this film, whereas in the series, 1 week he's okay with being half human, the next he isn't. Using that example, I would love to hear you guys call out Bones on the McCoy contradiction in your The Wrath of Khan show. Obviously, to a large degree, this came about due to the change in regime from Gene still being the overseer of things Trek to his being pushed aside by Paramount for Harv Bennett and Nick Meyer, who clearly had some different philosophical ideas on how to pursue the next film. But thematically, it's a huge 180-degree swing in philosophy to go from having Bones rip Kirk a new one for not accepting his new role as an elder statesman, desk-bound admiral, and acting like a bitter old man, to having Bones rip Kirk a new one for accepting his fate as an elder statesman, desk-bound admiral, and acting like a bitter old man. It doesn't really strike me as a contradiction for Bones, honestly, because he was always sort of a Gumby character. Oh, I mean, forgive me, it's a contradiction for the character, but he was always treated. That was one of my biggest complaints about this character in particular. Mm-hmm. Whatever we need him to be this week, he's going to be. And it was the same for Scotty, too. But it almost seems worse for Bones. It's like, so this week we need him to be hitting on everything with a skirt. Okay, excellent.
Right.
And this week we need him to be, stoic. And this week we need him to be completely sensible. And this week he needs to give into his passions. I honestly do think that Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, was almost a reboot of the movies. And so, yes, I think the motion picture is canon, although, as somebody else pointed out, where's the new godlike entity that was created by, Decker getting it on with V'ger?
Yeah, right.
You don't know, and we'll probably never hear from it again. But, I mean, they kind of reset Kirk's character in the motion picture by, okay, so he was this desk-bound thing, but now he's coming back and he's taking command, and oh yeah, look at that. And then they do the exact same thing again to start Star Trek II.
Yeah.
It feels to me like I don't want to say that you can completely discount TMP, but as far as the character development in the motion picture, it with the exception of what happens to Spock,
right?
It feels like everything else that happens with the characters can be ignored from the motion picture, and maybe we pick up from The Wrath of Khan as far as the character development. Anyway, that's sort of my take on it. What about you?
I like to think that maybe there's a missing scene because you can, again, we'll go back to our T-shirt, just retcon it.
Yeah.
I feel like you can justify McCoy's different positions on Kirk between the motion picture and The Wrath of Khan if you just purely take it on the basis that Kirk is acting like a jerk in the motion picture.
Yes, he is.
Okay, so he's full of himself, he's smug, he's heroic, he's going to take that command partly because he is the best person for the job, but a huge part of that because it's ego. And we see his fish out of water, his failing at that. I like to think that what McCoy is saying is not, you're not accepting your new role. It's, Kirk, you're being an ass about this. You are disrespecting the people around you by doing this. It's okay if you want to be captain again. It's okay if you still want to be in the captain's seat, but you've got to reconcile this on your own. So it's okay to me that McCoy is that little angel or demon on Kirk's shoulder whispering something into his ear about how Kirk is behaving. McCoy has always been that, and Spock has always been that as well. And as we know throughout the history of Star Trek, Kirk at least has surrounded him with people whose opinions he respects and will actually listen to before he has to make a final decision. So, yeah, the advice may be a little bit different, but this is a slightly different Kirk that we meet in The Wrath of Khan than we met in the motion picture. And if we go back and kind of retcon that timeline again, there's a bigger gap between the motion picture and The Wrath of Khan than just the 3 years between the movies being released.
Yeah, you're not retconning that. I mean, it's stated that the motion picture is about 2.5 years after the 5-year mission.
Right.
But then, Star Trek II is 15 years after the first season.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been like 7 years at this point, and that's plenty of time for situations to have changed, and McCoy's opinion of them to have changed.
Yeah. So I'm okay with that. I think it's a really good thing that Dan picked up on, that Bones does have this little bit of flip-flop, and I think you and I are both okay with it for different reasons. You know?
Mostly because, I mean, flip-flop is practically McCoy's middle name. I mean,
right.
Through no fault of his own, he's not that kind of character. It's just writers are like, we need somebody to do something.
Sure. Just as long as he sounds irascible, then it's okay, whatever he says. Yeah.
Damn it, John, he's a doctor, not irascible.
Right.
Oh, irascible. Right. I'm sorry, I misunderstood. Go ahead.
Yeah. All right. Last email. Guys, I have some stupid questions. No, they're not stupid questions. Regarding when you guys reach the next generation in a few weeks, will the website design change to represent TNG? Will you guys bring Will Wheaton on as a guest? Will the format of the podcast go back to one similar to TOS's? Kevin. Thank you, Kevin. Questions, the answers to your question, no idea.
Well, we know about the last one. The last one, I mean, it's already started to go back to that a little bit with the movies.
Yeah.
So
we have changed it up.
Format will be coming back to about the way it was, probably.
Yeah. We're always open to kind of tweak it to make it fit better for what our listeners ask for, or whatever pleases us from week to week. As far as guests, who knows? We have a long list of guests that we want and that we have reached out to, and honestly, it's just a matter of timing. It's not just the hour that we sit down with somebody. It's the hours and hours and hours of planning and editing and everything else that we do along with it. So who knows? We love having guests. It's just a matter of making it fit. And as far as the website, stick around. We have ideas. So there you go.
Why did you even take this question if you weren't going to answer it? I asked you, Senator.
I answered it.
Yeah, okay.
I answered
You said that there was a question. You could go and meet the press. I'm just saying.
Well, how much more detail would you like on that?
Me? I know the answers. Whatever. Don't worry about it, man. Let's go on. We got other stuff, right? I think we have other stuff, don't we?
No, that's it. We're going to end with our conversation with Curtis Armstrong, talking about Nicholas Meyer, and a couple of other comments from listeners, and that'll do it for today's supplemental.
And then we will see you in just a very few days when we go Spock hunting. No, on the search for Spock.
What do King of the Nerds creator Curtis Armstrong, King of the Nerds winner Kayla LaFrance, Wrath of Khan director Nicholas Meyer, and Sherlock Holmes all have in common? The answer, of course, is Star Trek.
Have you ever met or talked to Nicholas Meyer?
Oh yes, I know Nick because initially I did a few years ago I did a pilot with him.
Oh, okay.
And we did it up in Vancouver, I think, and it was never picked up, but it was really fun actually because the year before, I think, before we did this, I had been in New York for the Baker Street Irregulars dinner, and Nick had been inducted into the Baker Street Irregulars that year.
Oh, okay, cool.
And I had been inducted, I think, the year before. So I was there at the dinner with Nick Meyer, but I never actually got a chance to talk to him. Mm-hmm. And so the next thing I know, I think a year later, I get an audition for Nicholas Meyer for this pilot. So I went in to read for it, and he's there at a table with, the casting people and a couple of producers and so on. And I went in and I read, and I have to say, and I don't say this often, but I read well. And it was one of those moments where you actually think that you read well and you're right, as opposed to the many more times when you read for something and you think you did well and you never hear from them again.
Right.
And so we finished the read, and he says, I know you from somewhere. He said, I know your work, but I have a feeling I've seen you somewhere. And I said, well, you may have seen me last year at the BSI dinner when you got your... And his face started to light up. And I said, I actually was inducted the year before. And Nicholas Meyer, at this point, leaps up from behind the table, rushes around the table to me, grabs me and hugs me.
Oh,
and
man.
He then turns to the people who are auditioning me and said, you people don't have any idea what it means to have the letters BSI after your name. And they're just sitting there looking blank and had no clue. I mean, we might have, lapsed into Sumerian as far as these people are concerned. None of it, Baker Street Irregulars and so it was really fun. So I went up and I did that with him, and then subsequently I've been to two events with him where we've been doing we've presented papers at BSI events. One here in LA and one in Indianapolis. So or Bloomington. So we see each other, socially on those occasions. But
cool.
Unfortunately, the pilot never went, and so.
But essentially, what you're proving is that Hollywood is a network of secret cabals and cliques, and you can only get a job if you know the secret handshake.
Well, it helps.
Yeah, right.
But of course, the thing about Baker Street Irregulars is that it's not it's not one of the cabals that really gets you anywhere. I mean, it's for people, it's for people like Nicholas Meyer and me, who get enormous joy out of these things. And it's interesting because when he did when we did this event in Bloomington at the University of Bloomington, I guess, I was doing a paper and he was doing a question and answer. He was hosting a screening of 7% Solution.
Cool.
But one of the things that came out of it, in addition to this screening, was enormous discussion, not just about Sherlock Holmes, but about Star Trek.
Okay, Curtis, so I know you didn't watch a lot of Next Generation, is that correct?
No.
Okay. Did you ever watch the episodes with the holodeck program and Data and the Moriarty character?
Oh, yes.
What did you think of those?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was brilliant. I mean, I really like that because, like I say, I have going back to the 60s, there was so much interplay between between the Holmes world and the Star Trek world. It was really fun to see that. And there was another one too. I'm trying to remember what the other one was. Maybe you can. In one of the later shows, there was something, it seems to me, having to do with this. And then there was also there was also the Spock. It wasn't just that Spock was very Holmesian or Holmesian. Mm-hmm. It was also Nimoy, because Nimoy played Sherlock Holmes, and he played him on a PBS special when it was still NET, and he played him on Broadway in the William Gillette play. So there, the mixture of Star Trek and Holmes was always delightful. And then there was also, I know what I was thinking. It wasn't really Sherlock Holmes at all. It was Jack the Ripper. It was the Ray Jack.
Okay.
That was really fun, because in a way there's the Sherlock Holmes fandom, there's the Star Trek fandom, and believe it or not, there is a Jack the Ripper fandom. And the three of them coming together, sort of, or at least two of them in Star Trek, was really fun.
Sure. Well, and of course, you must be a fan of Nick Meyer's movie Time After Time.
Oh, yes. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
I absolutely loved that movie.
It's so cool.
It's just so great. I mean, so brilliant. One of the things I loved about that movie, one of my favorite things, is Malcolm McDowell asked by the police what his name is, and he doesn't want to say H.G. Wells because he thinks they'll think he's crazy. So he picks Sherlock Holmes because he figures, even though it's never said, it's obvious that he picked it off the top of his head because he figured no one would remember that name.
Right.
Right.
Which was just awesome.
So good.
I screamed when that happened.
Hey guys, this is Grayson from Tampa. Before we get to completely passing up the time of the original series, I had a really interesting experience. I went to see 2001: A Space Odyssey at the Tampa Theater at a great projection, old movie house. It was really something to see. I went with my dad. It was a really good time. And it dawned on me that 2001 may have saved Star Trek for all of us. And of course, 2001 came out basically at the end of the run of Star Trek. It was basically being made while Star Trek was airing. But if you go back to the beginning, I think we all agree that the second pilot, Where No Man Has Gone Before, and the performance of Gary Lockwood in that as Gary Mitchell really crystallized what the series was going to be about. It was this just this powerful ability of one character to sort of flip the show, and it gave us the Rock'em Sock'em fight, it gave us the deep ideas, it gave us everything, and he really had to nail that performance. Well, he, of course, was in 2001: A Space Odyssey, and he had been cast in the movie by that point, and as you can imagine, you get cast in that movie. They hadn't started shooting the casting scene. The scenes were casted in 2001. That happened just a little bit after they shot, and we're talking about a matter of months after they shot Where No Man Has Gone Before. And you can imagine when you cast in a movie like that, he was cast as Frank Poole, you're going to have these long, crazy space conversations with Stanley Kubrick, and you're going to have this mentality of looking at the big picture, of seeing this as more than just Buck Rogers in space. And I can't help but thinking that Gary Lockwood's experience of starting to work on 2001 influenced his experience on Star Trek, which was really the catalyst for getting that show going. So we have him to thank for all of this. Stanley Kubrick, of course. Love the show, guys. Thank you.
Hello, John and Ken. This is Greg, longtime listener, first-time caller. I can't believe in The Infinite Vulcan you did not reference the day the Earth stood still. Obviously, the Felosians and Giant Spock and the Doctor went on to build the race of Gorts that look after our universe and are our universe police force. So I can't believe you missed that one. Just thought I'd check in with you. Have a good one. Bye.